Brianna!
I have worked the night shift at Harlow Medical Center for 3 years. 3 years of double shifts, cold coffee, and walking to my car alone at 11 p.m. because that's just what you do when you're a single mother trying to keep the lights on. I was never afraid of that parking garage. Until the night Deshaun decided it was the perfect place to remind me who he thought he was. I heard him before I saw him. That voice. Low and tight the way it always got when he had been drinking. The way it got right before things broke. Brianna. Just my name. But I felt it in my chest like a warning. I turned around too slow. He already had my wrist. He pulled me between two parked cars into the shadow, away from the cameras, away from the lights. Deshaun always knew exactly where the cameras were. That was one of the first things I should have noticed about him. Years ago. Before I married him. Before I had his daughter. Before I spent 4 years learning what it meant to be loved by a man who thought love was something you enforced. You thought you could just leave me? His voice was shaking. You changed your number. You moved. You think I don't know where you work? Deshaun. Don't say my name like that. Like I'm crazy. Like I'm the problem. He grabbed my arm. My right arm. And he twisted. I want you to understand what that pain felt like. It wasn't sharp. It was deep. The kind of pain that goes past the bone and settles somewhere inside you and just stays there. I felt something shift in my shoulder that I knew immediately was wrong. I cried out. Go ahead, he whispered. He actually smiled. Scream. Nobody's going to hear you down here. I believed him. The garage was empty. It was late. I had my phone in my bag, but my bag was on the ground in my arm. Then I heard it. One tap. Single. Deliberate. On Deshaun's shoulder. Deshaun froze. Then he turned around slowly, the way men do when they want whoever is behind them to know they are not afraid. The man standing there was not tall in the way Deshaun was tall. He was lean. So, he was wearing a dark suit that looked like it cost more than my rent, and he had his hands in his pockets and he was looking at Deshaun the way you look at something you have already decided what to do with. He didn't say anything. You lost, man? Walk away, Deshaun said. The man tilted his head slightly. Still said nothing. Deshaun pulled his fist back. What happened next? I have replayed it in my mind so many times. And every time it still doesn't feel real. It was fast. The kind of fast that doesn't look fast until it's already over. Deshaun's fist never landed. His arm went one way. His body went another. And then he was face down on the concrete and Deshaun was making a sound I had never heard him make before. A sound like something leaving him. The man leaned down. Said something in Deshaun's ear. I couldn't hear the words. But Deshaun stopped moving. The man stood up. Straightened his jacket. And then he looked at me. He looked at my arm first. Then my face. His expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. Can you walk? His voice was quiet. Accented. I nodded. I don't even know how. He picked up my bag from the ground. Handed it to me without a word. Then he walked beside me to my car. Not behind me, beside me, and he stood there while I unlocked it with shaking hands. I got in. He closed the door. I looked up at him through the window. He had already turned and walked back into the dark. I sat in that car for 25 minutes. My arm was throbbing. Deshaun was still on the ground in the distance. And all I could think about, was the way that man had looked at me. Not with pity. Not with surprise. Like he had just done the most natural thing in the world. I reported the incident to security. I told them a man had attacked me in the garage and that someone had intervened. They reviewed the cameras. The camera in Section C, the section where it happened, had gone dark at 10:58 p.m. They said it was a technical issue. I knew it wasn't. I went to the ER that same night. My shoulder was partially dislocated. They put it back. Gave me a sling. Told me to rest. I went back to work 2 days later because I don't have the luxury of rest. My arm was still in the sling when my supervisor called me into his office and told me there was going to be a private event at the hospital's new research wing. Donors. Investors. People with money and names I probably wouldn't recognize. He wanted me on the hosting team. You're good with people, Brianna. You make things feel comfortable. I said yes because you always say yes when your supervisor is looking at you like that. The event was 3 days later. I wore the black dress I keep for things like this. I did my hair. I stood near the entrance with a tray of champagne glasses and I smiled at people whose watches cost more than my car. I saw him before he saw me. He walked in with 4 other men, all of them in dark suits, all of them scanning the room the way people do when they're always thinking about exits. He was in the middle. The others kept a half step behind him, not beside him. Behind. My heart did something embarrassing. I told myself to be professional. I told myself he probably didn't even remember me. It had been 3 days. He had probably done things like that, intervened, walked away, more times than he could count. Then he turned his head and looked directly at me. Not scanning the room. Not looking past me. At me. I almost dropped the champagne. He said something to the man beside him. The man nodded and the group moved further into the room. He broke away and walked toward me. I stood very still. Your arm, he said. He gestured toward the sling. I'm okay. Thank you. For the other night. I didn't get to. Don't. His voice was even. You don't need to thank me. He looked at me for a moment longer than felt casual. What is your name? Brianna. He nodded once. Like he was filing it somewhere. J1, he said. And then someone called his name from across the room and just like that he was gone. What nobody told me about J1 was what I found out the next morning when I made the mistake of Googling his name. Chairman of the CO Group. 34 years old. His company owned pharmaceutical distribution chains across 12 countries. 3 of those countries were in Africa. But it wasn't the business that made my stomach drop. It was the other articles. The ones from 6 years ago. The ones that used words like investigation and alleged and criminal organization. The ones that named him in the same sentence as men who had disappeared. The cases were all dropped. Every single one. I put my phone down. I picked it up again. I looked at the photo of him in the articles. Younger, harder, staring into the camera like a dare. I thought about the parking garage. The way Deshaun went down. The way he leaned in and whispered something and Deshaun just stopped. I thought about the camera going dark at 10:58 p.m. I put my phone down again and I didn't pick it up. He sent flowers to the hospital 3 days later. No card. But my name was on the envelope. My colleague Tanya held them up with wide eyes. Brianna. Who sent you peonies at work? I didn't answer. I took them home and put them in a vase and told myself it didn't mean anything. It meant something. The CO Group's new partnership with Harlow Medical Center was announced 2 weeks later. J1 would be on the board of the new research foundation. He would be attending quarterly meetings at our facility. My supervisor assigned me as the primary liaison for donor relations. I have never been assigned anything like that before in my life. I am a very good nurse. I am also not naive. The first meeting I was professional. I took notes. I confirmed schedules. I did not make eye contact for longer than necessary. He watched me the entire time. Not obviously. Not in a way that anyone else would notice. But I noticed. Because I was trying very hard not to look at him and that meant I was very aware of exactly where he was in the room at all times. Afterward, when everyone was filing out, he stopped beside me. You're avoiding looking at me, he said. I'm working. You were working at the event too. You looked at me then. I didn't have an answer for that. He almost smiled. I could see it at the corner of his mouth. This small restrained thing, like he didn't do it often and wasn't sure he should. Have dinner with me, he said. I don't think that's appropriate. Why? Because you're a donor and I work here and those aren't your real reasons. He was right. They weren't. I have a daughter, I said. Like that was a wall. I know, he said. And then he left. He knew. That kept me up that night. He knew I had a daughter. Which meant he had found that out somehow. Which meant he had been looking. I should have been scared. I think part of me was. But another part of me, the part that had spent 4 years with a man who treated my daughter like an inconvenience, felt something completely different. Someone had looked. And what they found hadn't made them leave. I said yes 2 weeks later. Not because he kept asking. He didn't. He asked once and then he waited. And somehow the waiting was worse than if he had kept asking. I got a babysitter. I put on a dress that wasn't the black one I use for work. I met him at a restaurant I would never have been able to afford on my own. He was already there when I arrived. Standing outside waiting, not sitting inside making me walk to him. I noticed that. Dinner was not what I expected. I expected someone cold. Transactional. Someone who would talk about himself the entire time. He asked me about my daughter first. Her name, Zara. How old? 6. What she was like. She's loud, I said. She sings everything, including things that should not be songs. Like grocery lists. He laughed. A real one. Short, like he surprised himself. What is she like when she's scared? He asked. Strange question. She gets quiet, I said. Really still. She watched me get hurt once and she just went completely silent. It scared me more than the crying would have. He was quiet for a moment. Children who go still when they're scared, he said slowly, they learn that from watching the adults around them. They learn that making noise doesn't help. I looked at him. You did that too, I said. It wasn't a question. He picked up his glass. Didn't answer. But he didn't deny it either. He told me a little. Not everything. I understood I was getting the version he had decided to give me, and that was fine because I wasn't ready for the rest. He grew up in Busan. His father was not a good man. He left at 17. He built something. He was careful about what words he used for what he built, and I was careful not to push. Do you regret it? I asked. Whatever it took to get here. He thought about it genuinely. I could see him actually thinking. I regret some of it, he said. Not most of it. He walked me to my car that night. At the door he stopped and looked at me in that way he had, direct, unblinking, like he was reading something. Your shoulder, he said. Is it healed? Almost. He nodded. Reached out and very gently, so gently it almost didn't happen, touched the edge of my shoulder where the sling had been. Then he stepped back. Good night, Brianna. I drove home with my heart making so much noise I could barely think. We had dinner 2 more times after that. And something started to happen that I did not have words for at first. He started to fill in around the edges of my life without making a production of it. Not with grand gestures. With small things. My car had a brake light out. I came home one evening to find it had been fixed, no explanation. A difficult patient left me so drained one afternoon that I sat in the break room unable to move. And somehow within the hour there was food at the nurse's station with my name on it. Not flowers this time. Real food. Beef steaks from the place 2 blocks away that I had mentioned in passing 3 weeks earlier. I called him the second time it happened. J1. Yes. You need to stop. Pause. Stop what? You know what? Another pause. Longer. Then, does it bother you? I opened my mouth to say yes. I could not say yes. I didn't think so, he said quietly. And I could hear something in his voice, not smugness. Something quieter and more careful than that. I did not call him back that night. But I did not stop eating the food. 3 weeks after our first dinner I got a phone call from a number I did not recognize. The man on the other end introduced himself as Mr. Lim. His voice was pleasant. Almost gentle. The voice of someone who had learned a long time ago that politeness is more threatening than shouting. He told me he was an associate of J1's. An old one. And then he told me, still very pleasantly, that continuing my association with Chairman Seo would not be in my best interest. Or my daughter's. He said my daughter's name. He said Zara. I felt the temperature of the room drop. He said it the way you say a name when you want someone to understand that you know exactly where to find the person attached to it. He said it and then he paused just long enough and then he wished me a good evening and hung up. I stood in my kitchen holding my phone for a full minute after the call ended. The food on my stove was burning. I did not move to turn it off. He had said her name. Sir. I called J1. He answered on the second ring the way he always did. Like he had been expecting it. Someone called me, I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Someone named Lim. The silence on the other end lasted exactly 3 seconds. I counted them. Are you at home? Yes. Is Zara with you? She's sleeping. Good. Stay there. Lock the door. I'm coming. J1. But he had already hung up. I stood in my kitchen. The food was still burning. I turned off the stove. I walked to Zara's room and I opened the door and I stood in the doorway and I watched her sleep for a moment. The cartoon frog pajamas, her small chest rising and falling, completely unaware. He had said her name. I went back to the front door and I locked it. And then I stood in my hallway with my back against the wall and I waited. He arrived 38 minutes later. I know because I watched the clock. I opened the door before he knocked. He was still in his suit. He looked at my face first. The way he always looked at me when he arrived somewhere, a quick full read checking, and then he looked past me into the apartment. She's still sleeping, I said. He nodded and came inside. He had never been inside my apartment before. He stood in my small living room and he looked around, not judgmentally, not with the evaluating eye of someone measuring what they saw against what they were used to. Just noting. The way he always noted things. The photos of Zara on the wall. The single couch. The stack of medical textbooks on the kitchen table that I had been meaning to reorganize for 3 months. The flowers, his flowers, the peonies still in the vase on the counter, 1 week old now and barely wilting. He saw the flowers and he looked at them for a moment. Just a moment. Then he sat down. Tell me exactly what he said, he said. Word for word, as much as you can. I told him. Word for word. When I got to the part where Lim said Zara's name, something shifted in Jaewon's face. A tightening so fast and controlled that if I had not been watching for it I would have missed it entirely. When I finished he was quiet for a long time. How long have you known about Lim? I asked. He looked at me. Long enough, he said. That's not an answer. No, he agreed. It's not. He leaned forward with his elbows on his knees and he looked at his hands for a moment. Something I had never seen him do, look down. Jaewon always looked forward or up at things, at people, at exits. He almost never looked down. Lim is someone from before, he said. From when I was building. He was involved in the early years. He helped me when I had no leverage and no name and nothing to offer except the certainty that I was going to make something or die trying. He believes that history entitles him to something from me. Something I stopped giving a long time ago. What does he want? Control. A percentage of something he did not build and does not deserve. He paused. He has been patient for a long time. And now he has found something he thinks he can use. The way he said the last sentence, quiet, measured, like he was reporting a fact and not talking about me and my daughter, made something in my chest go cold. He thinks he can use us, I said. Jaewon looked at me directly. Yes. I appreciated that he did not soften it. What does he think you'll do if he threatens us? Give him what he wants. Or remove you from the situation so there's nothing to threaten. Remove me. I let that sit. What does that mean, remove me? It means end things. Send you away. Make sure you're no longer something he can reach. I was quiet for a moment. And what are you going to do? I asked. He was quiet for a long time. Long enough that I started to prepare myself for the answer I did not want. Then he said, neither of those things. He stood up and walked to the window and looked out at the street below. His back was to me. I watched him stand there, still and controlled the way he always was, but underneath it something that was working hard, something I was only starting to learn to read. There are things I should have told you before, he said, still looking out the window. Before any of this reached you. I told myself there was time. That it would not come here. He stopped. I waited. I was not careful enough, he said. Because I did not want to be. Because being careful would have meant staying away from you and I had already decided I was not going to do that. He turned from the window and looked at me. I need to tell you everything, he said. Not the version I gave you at dinner. Everything. And after I tell you, if you want to walk away, I will make sure that you and Zara are protected for as long as necessary. You will not be in danger. I will handle that regardless of what you decide. I looked at this man standing in my small living room in his expensive suit that was slightly out of place against my modest couch, and I thought about the parking garage. The tap on Deshawn's shoulder. The way he had walked me to my car and stood there until I locked the door and then turned and walked back into the dark without waiting to be thanked. Sit down, I said. And tell me everything. He told me for almost 2 hours. I will not repeat all of it here. Some of it is not mine to repeat. Some of it I am still sitting with. Some of it I have made a decision not to know in too much detail because there is a difference between the truth and the specifics and I am a practical woman. What I will tell you is this. He built his company in the places that the legitimate world does not reach. In the gaps. In the cities where supply chains break down and governments are unreliable, and the difference between medicine arriving and medicine not arriving can be a single man with the right connections and the willingness to do what official channels cannot. He was that man. He became more than that man. He became someone that certain kinds of people needed and certain other kinds of people feared. And for a long time those two things were the same thing. He had done things he could not undo. He was clear about this. He did not dress it up. He had also, and this part he said more quietly like he was not used to saying it aloud, built hospitals in 4 countries. Funded medical supply routes that nobody else would fund. paid for treatments for hundreds of people who could not pay themselves. He did not say this like he was asking for credit. He said it like he was giving me the full picture, the whole thing, not just the part that made him look dangerous. I sat across from him and I listened to all of it. When he was done, he was quiet for a long time. He looked at his hands again. "How you know," he said. "How I know," I agreed. He looked up. And I thought about everything he had just told me. I thought about the articles I had read. I thought about the way he had fixed my brake light without saying anything. The jollof rice. The way he listened to me like I was the only person in the room. The way he had laughed at dinner, short and real and surprised. I thought about my daughter sleeping in the next room and the man who had said her name on the phone to remind me she was findable. I thought about a 17-year-old boy in Busan who had left late. "I'm not walking away," I said. Something crossed his face that I had never seen on it before. Something that on anyone else I would have called relief, except relief looked too small for what it was. "Brianna. I'm not walking away, Jaewon. But I need you to understand something." He waited. "If you ever hold something back from me again because you are trying to protect me, not protect Zara, not keep us safe, but protect me from information because you think I can't handle it, we are going to have a very serious problem. Do you understand me?" He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "Yes." Just that. Like a man making a real agreement and not just telling someone what they want to hear. "Hey," I said. "Then we're okay." He was quiet for another moment. Then he said very quietly, "I don't know what to do with you." He said it like it was not a complaint. Like it was the first honest sentence he had said all night. He met Zara on a Saturday 2 weeks later. I had not planned it carefully. I had told Zara I had a friend coming over, which she took to mean snacks were coming, and was immediately enthusiastic. She was in her cartoon frog pajamas by the time he arrived because she had decided pajamas were what you wore for having friends over, and I had decided not to fight that battle. Jaewon arrived with food. Actual food, not something fancy, nothing showy. He had stopped somewhere and bought the kind of food a child might want. I saw him look at the bag in his hand when I opened the door like he was second-guessing it, and I thought, this man who does not second-guess anything just second-guess takeaway food for a 6-year-old. I took the bag and let him in. Zara came around the corner and stopped. She looked at him with the full unself-conscious assessment of a 6-year-old who has not yet learned to pretend she is not evaluating you. Jaewon looked back at her with the full attention he gave to everything. There was a pause. "Are you my mom's boyfriend?" she asked. "Zara," I started. "I'm not sure yet," Jaewon said seriously. "I'm still working on it." Zara considered this like it was a reasonable answer. Which I had to admit it was. "Do you know Uno?" she asked. "No." He turned to me. "Mom. He doesn't know Uno." She said it the way you would report a concerning gap in someone's education. "I can learn," Jaewon said. Zara looked back at him. Something shifted in her face. A decision being made. "Okay," she said. "Sit down." She taught him Uno for 45 minutes with the intensity and thoroughness of someone who took the transmission of knowledge very seriously. She explained every rule twice. He quizzed him. At one point she made him repeat the rules back to her to check retention. Jaewon sat through all of it with complete and total attention. He did not check his phone. He did not look impatient. He asked clarifying questions. Good ones. Zara approved of the clarifying questions. They played 3 rounds. He lost all 3. I watched from the kitchen doorway. I watched this man, this still, cold, careful man who moved through rooms like a weather system, sitting cross-legged on my modest carpet being scolded by a 6-year-old for playing a draw 4 at the wrong moment. And I watched him take the scolding with the gravity it deserved. And I watched Zara watch him taking it seriously and relax completely into his presence like she had known him forever. Children know things. They know things that take adults years to figure out. When Zara finally went to bed, she stopped at the door and turned back. "You can come back," she said. To him specifically. Very formally. Like she was issuing a permit. Jaewon said, "Thank you." No irony. No amusement. Just thank you, directly, like she had given him something real. I went to the kitchen so he would not see my face. He came and stood in the doorway. "She's everything you said," he said quietly. "Completely herself." "She liked you," I said. I was still not looking at him. "I know." Pause. "I liked her too." He came and stood beside me at the counter. "Brianna." I looked up. He kissed me for the first time. Slow. Deliberate. Like he was asking a question and had been thinking about how to ask it for a long time. One hand at my jaw, gentle. When he pulled back, he looked at me the way he had looked at me in the parking garage. That same direct, certain look. But different now. Softer underneath in some way he probably did not even know about himself yet. Okay, I whispered. He smiled. A full one. The second one I had ever seen. And that was when I understood that I was completely in love with this man. I did not tell him that. Not yet. But I knew. Love is never just love. That is something nobody tells you. Love between two ordinary people is complicated enough. Love that reaches into a world like the one Jae-won lived in. That was something else entirely. Something that required a different kind of courage than I had been asked for before. I did not know that yet. Not fully. I was learning it. Mr. Lim tried again 6 weeks after the phone call. Not a phone call this time. I was picking Zara up from school on a Tuesday. It was a normal afternoon. She was telling me about a girl in her class who had brought in a hamster for show and tell, and the hamster had escaped under the teacher's desk, and she was telling this story with the breathless urgency it deserved. I was laughing. And then I saw the car. Dark. Parked just past the school gate in a spot that was not a parking spot. Engine running. I grabbed Zara's hand mid-sentence. She felt the change in my grip immediately and went quiet. The window came down. There were two men. The one in the passenger seat held up a phone. On the screen was a photograph. I could not see it clearly from where I was standing, but I did not need to see it clearly. I knew what it was. I knew what it was supposed to tell me. Tell Chairman Seo that Mr. Lim says hello, the man said pleasantly. The window went back up. The car pulled away slowly. Zara was looking up at me. I was still holding her hand. Too tight. I loosened my grip. Mama, she said. She only called me Mama when she was scared. She had not done it in over a year. It's okay, baby, I said. Let's go home. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get her buckled into her car seat. She let me buckle her without a word, watching my face the whole time with that stillness I had described to Jae-won at dinner. Going quiet. Going still. I drove 2 blocks and pulled over. I called Jae-won. He picked up in one ring this time. They came to Zara's school, I said. They were outside the gate. They had a photograph. 3 seconds of silence. Are you in your car? Yes. Is Zara with you? Yes. Don't go home. Go to the place on Meridian that I took you to last week. The restaurant on the corner. Go inside and sit down and order something and wait for me. Do not park on the street, use the lot behind. Do you remember where it is? Yes. I'll be 20 minutes. He was there in 16. He came through the door of the restaurant and looked for us and found us in the corner booth in the back, and the look on his face when he saw us. When he saw Zara sitting there with her juice box, perfectly fine, perfectly unharmed, was a look I will never forget for the rest of my life. He sat down across from us. He looked at Zara. Hey, he said. She looked at him very seriously. You came fast, she said. Yes. My mom was scared. I started to say something. He held up one hand slightly, not to silence me, just to hold the moment. I know, he said to Zara. I'm sorry that happened. It won't happen again. Zara looked at him for another moment. Then she picked up her juice box and went back to it, apparently satisfied. He looked at me across the table. I did not say anything. Neither did he. We did not need to. What I saw in his face across that table was something I had not seen before. Not quite anger. Anger was too simple for it. Something older than anger. Something that had made a decision. He called someone while we were still at the table. He stepped a few feet away and spoke in Korean, low and very brief. Maybe 30 seconds. When he came back, he sat down and he looked at Zara's juice box. Can I have some? He asked her. She handed it to him with great seriousness. He took a sip. Handed it back. I watched this and I thought, this is who he is. All of it. Every part. And I was still not leaving. He took us to his home that night. Not to hide us, he was clear about that. He wanted us somewhere he could see. Somewhere that was not findable in 30 seconds by someone who already knew Zara's school pickup schedule. His home was not what I expected. It was large but quiet. Clean in the way that meant someone actually lived there and cared about it, not in the way of a house that gets cleaned for guests. He had books, real ones, red ones with broken spines. He had a kitchen that was stocked like someone cooked in it. He had one photograph on the wall of what looked like a coastline in Korea, the sea gray and enormous. Zara fell asleep on his couch within an hour, shoes still on, frog pajamas rumpled, looking completely at peace in someone else's home the way only children can. We sat together after she was asleep and he told me the rest. The parts he had still been holding back. Not because he was trying to manage me. Because some things are heavy and you put them down slowly. He told me about the early years. The specific things. I sat still and I listened and I held all of it. When he was done he said, I need to ask you something. Ask. After everything, all of it, do you still want this? Not just to stay in spite of it. But to actually want this. Me. What this looks like. I looked at my daughter sleeping on his couch with her shoes on. I looked at this man who had walked toward a stranger in a parking garage at 11 p.m. for no reason except that something in him could not keep walking. I looked at the coastline photograph on the wall and thought about a 17-year-old who left late. Yes, I said. I want this. He nodded slowly. Then he said, I want you here. Both of you. Not tonight because of Lim. Here. With me. I had not expected that. Not yet. Not so directly. J1. Not right now if you're not ready, he said quickly. Not tomorrow. But I want you to know that's what I'm asking for. Eventually. When you're ready. I'm not asking you to rush. I'm asking you to know. I did not say anything for a long moment. Then I started to cry. Not because I was sad. Not because I was afraid. Something else entirely. Something that had been waiting for a long time to be let out. The 4 years with Deshawn. The years before that, being told in small and large ways that I was too much or not enough or the wrong shape for the kind of love that was steady and choosing and stayed. He moved from his chair and sat beside me and put his arm around me. Carefully. The way he always touched me like I was something worth being careful with. He did not tell me to stop crying. He did not try to fix it or explain it away. He just stayed. We sat like that for a long time. Zara slept on the couch across from us, completely still, completely safe. Outside, whatever J1 had set in motion on that phone call was already moving. I did not need to know the details of that. I knew the outcome. Deshawn was formally charged 5 weeks later. I do not know exactly what happened. I know that 2 investigators showed up at his workplace with documentation I had never filed. I know that the assault in the parking garage, which the cameras had failed to capture, was somehow reconstructed in precise detail from 3 other angles that nobody had mentioned before. I know that Mr. Lim became very difficult to locate for a period of time shortly after the school incident. And that when he became locatable again he had new priorities that did not involve me or my daughter. I did not ask J1 for specifics. He did not offer them. Deshawn called me from jail. He told me I had made a powerful enemy. I told him I had made a powerful friend. And I hung up. We moved in with J1 4 months later. Not because things were perfect. They were not always perfect. Loving someone who was built for solitude, who had kept his life deliberately empty for years, who was learning how to make room for 2 people when he had never made room for anyone. That came with friction sometimes. There were nights we sat across from each other in disagreement. There were nights he went quiet in ways that took me a while to learn were not about me. There were things in his past that surfaced sometimes like weather. But he always came back. He always told me the truth. He always asked, not assumed. And Zara, my daughter who had gone still and silent when she was scared, who had learned that making noise did not help, started singing again. All the time. Grocery lists. Bedtime routines. The names of all the things she was learning. She sang them like she had been given permission to be as loud as she actually was. Jawan sat through all of it. Every single song. He still lost at Uno. Every time. I started to think he was losing on purpose. When I accused him of this he gave me a look that was so perfectly neutral it was basically a confession. People ask me sometimes how we met. I tell them at the hospital. Which is technically true. What I do not tell them is the parking garage. The arm that still aches when it rains. The man who came out of the dark and asked very simply if I could walk. What I do not tell them is that J1 still sleeps like someone who spent years waiting for a threat. That sometimes at 3 a.m. he is already awake, sitting by the window looking out at the street below. And that I get up and go and sit beside him and we do not have to say anything. We just sit. Until whatever it is passes and he comes back and we sleep. What I do not tell them is that I am not the same woman who walked into that parking garage. I am louder now. I take up more space. I stopped making myself small to fit what someone else decided was the right size for me. I stopped apologizing for the things about me that are real. I am loved by someone who chose me deliberately, who came back and kept coming back, and who one night told me the whole truth and then waited in the silence while I decided what to do with it. They ask how we met and I say the hospital and I smile. And John, if he is nearby, just looks at me. That quiet look.